he had bashed Patrick's car up the night before the second FBI interview. We think he did that to kind of shake him up and destabilize Patrick. I mean, he just took like a baseball bat and just destroyed Patrick's Peugeot automobile. It's a very, very nice car, kind of his prized possession at the time. And that was the night before his second FBI interview, where they again tried to get him to admit that the car that he saw could have been Vince Foster's gray or silver 1989 Honda. But of course it wasn't.
Now, were you able to depose any of these people, or we never got that far?
No, in the civil suit, we didn't get to depose anybody.
All right.
Because it was dismissed. It took a couple of years to get dismissed, but that was only because we have a very slow judge. And all of this evidence and much more that I'm describing, we put in this bound volume, and I said 18 months it took us, but it's 500 pages, and it has over 1,000 footnotes in it. And the footnotes, we put the lengthy footnotes in because to show people that we weren't just taking a little excerpt from the record. This is out of context sort of thing, and it's a very good read. And so what I did recently was I took there are like I think 12 chapters, and every chapter I put at the beginning of every single chapter a summary of what it was. So people, if they don't want to read 500 pages, they can just read the chapters, the chapter summaries, the evidence summaries at the beginning of every chapter. And then recently, I took the 500 pages and took excerpts out of it, and you can tell where the excerpts begin and end, just to make it much shorter. And that's only 163 pages, and that's also at the website FBICoverup.com. We went through. We have 600 exhibits. And almost all of them, the exhibits that are filed with this document, are federal investigative records. There are only 6 records, affidavits that we didn't get from the federal government. So it's very authoritative. It's not us. We're just analyzing the federal government's own records.
Okay, I would like to ask you about TWA 800, though. Is there anything left in the Foster case you want to sum up before we get to this next topic?
I don't know if anything occurs to me. I'll kind of come up with it. But I think we sort of did talk about an overview. But I would encourage your listeners to go to FBICoverup.com and read some of this stuff. There's some fascinating things there about. And also motive, and who the perpetrators might have been. As we said over the course of, we've said for years, people say, "Well, who killed him? Who killed him?" Well, we don't really know who killed him. We know he was murdered, and we know that, and we proved it, and we know that who covered it up, and that is the FBI, the Park Police a little bit, but the FBI. The FBI investigated. Oh, now let's talk a little bit about the Congress. You read the news, Congress investigated that twice. Well, first of all, when the Senate Banking Committee did investigate an aspect of this case, but whenever there's a Senate investigation or Senate hearings, they do that by resolution. And the resolution sets forth what it is that the panel is investigating. And in Vince Foster's case, the Senate Banking Committee, it was whether or not the White House improperly influenced the Park Police during its probe. That was it. They didn't investigate what happened to Vince Foster. They didn't investigate anything else. That was it. That was the only thing they investigated. So if you read, well, there was a congressional investigation, no, there wasn't. First of all, the Park Police really didn't investigate. It was all FBI, and so it's just kind of ludicrous. And then there's another investigation, according to the news media, that was conducted by the Senate. That was by William Klinger, his report. Well, it's 12 pages long. He interviewed a couple park police and a couple of FBI agents and put those interviews in this report. I mean, it doesn't even. It's like a letter. It's not even I mean, you should see it. It's 12 pages long. And that's including the footnotes or the endnotes he has. I mean, it's not an investigation. So again, the investigative history. First, the FBI investigated, and it was allegedly the Park Police, but it was really the FBI. Second, under Fisk, the FBI investigated. Third, under Ken Starr, the FBI investigated. Klinger took all of his information from the FBI, almost all of it. I think he interviewed one Park Police officer. And the Senate Banking Committee, they gathered a lot of evidence, but they didn't have jurisdiction to look into, and they didn't decide how he died. Their only jurisdiction was to decide whether or not to investigate and write a report whether or not the White House improperly influenced the U.S. Park Police investigation. And there really wasn't a U.S. Park Police investigation. So, I mean, recently, since Donald Trump said there was something fishy about the case, there are all these articles that kind of appear out.
Yeah.
And, they're just so out of it. I mean, they just don't, there haven't, the FBI investigated. That's it. But you wouldn't know that from reading any of these news articles.
Yeah, no one brings up Miguel Rodriguez, that's for sure, or Patrick Knowlton. Now, let me ask a quick question. As far as motive goes, is that story out there? I don't know if you've heard it, but that Vince Foss was somehow involved with a Swiss bank account and a big check involving the Promise software and the murder of Danny Castellaro. And have you heard that? Yeah,
and I think there's something to that.
Okay.
The Rose Law Firm, Vince was a partner in the Rose Law Firm, as was Hillary.
Right.
And they represented Systematics. So there is something to that. And he did apparently have take trips to Switzerland. Short trips to Switzerland. I believe he took 2 of them. And Ambrose Evans Pritchard has written about that and investigated that. He's really a real investigative reporter, unlike the reporters in this country. I mean, think about it. Not one, in our website and in our book, we called it Failure of the Public Trust. It was that court filing that I've been talking about, that 500-page court filing. We have a section on the press there. And you should, and we reprinted that on a page in the website, and we talked to, and we have quotes from all of these journalists, and it's really, really telling. Nobody wants to touch it. I've had arguments with people about, how is it that all these journalists can be so dishonest and not want to get. And aren't they competitors? Don't they want to get the story? Well, that's just not the way news media in this country works. You don't get to be a reporter in a major and last if you go after stories that are not that your editor doesn't want you to. You get run out of the business. You don't make it to be a Sam Donaldson if you insist on making these, insist on covering these stories that the press doesn't want you to cover, that the upper echelons of the press doesn't want to cover. So how do you get to be a Sam Donaldson? Well, you go along with the program.
Right.
I mean, that's just you're in what we call an empty suit. That's just how you get there.
That is so
Incidentally,
true.
I found Sam Donaldson's home address. I talked to the lady who sold him his house. Coincidentally, and got his address and sent him over one of these books by courier. Of course, I never heard from him.
So you do have a book, Failure of the Public Trust.
Well, that's the court filing. We published it as a book after we filed it. Oh, we also filed it in the U.S. Supreme Court. We took Patrick's case, both the grand jury application and the civil suit, we appealed that to the U.S. Supreme Court after we appealed it to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. And it's a good read. That's the 500-page that we cooked down to 165 pages. And those are both on the website. And all of this evidence that I'm talking about, all of these allegations, all of the stuff that I've said, it's all in that book. And it's all quotes from the Federal Investigative Records. And the records are exhibits. And there's a separate volume of 600 pages of exhibits. So, don't take my word for it. Any of your listeners want to look at it, look at it.
Okay, real quick, what do you make of these stories that Hillary and Foster were having an affair?
Well, there's nothing in the federal record that proves that or shows that.
Right.
But I believe that is the case. I believe that they were having an affair, and a long-term affair. And we know that from interviews with the police officers who escorted the state troopers, Arkansas state troopers, whose job it was to escort Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and to guard the governor's mansion. We have their testimonies, their accounts, and they seem like straight shooters. And I don't think they all got together and made a big lie. I believe that they were, in fact, having an affair. There was one thing that I saw only once, and I haven't been able to find it since. I wanted to go back and find it. I couldn't find it. And that is it was a video taken during Vince Foster's funeral. And it's only like a very short video. It's like 10 seconds. And only in one corner you see Hillary Clinton's face. Hillary Clinton, you get a good shot of her on the corner of the screen. And you look at it closely, and she looks destroyed. I mean, she is a mess. It's just written all over her face. She's just a mess. So I think they were certainly close, even if they didn't have an affair, and I believe that they did, and I believe that the Arkansas state troopers are telling the truth about it.
Okay, we got about 15 minutes left. What can you tell us about your work with TWA 800?
Well, I was represented James and Elizabeth Sanders along with co-counsel Mark Lane. Mark Lane's kind of a famous, very well-known civil rights lawyer. And I was lucky enough to get that. And so James and Elizabeth Sanders, Elizabeth was was an employee of TWA, and James was an investigative journalist and had written books about POWs. That was kind of his area of expertise. In any event, James wrote an article called in the Press Enterprise, Southern California Press Enterprise. It had a very large readership in Southern California. He was the source for an article and contributed to a very long article entitled TWA Flight 800 was nailed by missile fire. And it had a map. It had a lot of things in it, and it was a very detailed description. And for those of your listeners who maybe weren't around then or younger, in July 17th, 1996, TWA Flight 800 with 235 passengers went down off the coast of Long Island. It was brought down by missile fire. There were over 200 witnesses who saw the missiles go up, hit the airplane, and the airplane come down. In Vince Foster's case, by contrast, there were no witnesses that we know about, but this one, 200. In fact, there were 673 people who saw various stages of the disaster, and about 200 of them saw the missile or missiles. Apparently, there was more than one. So, in any event, it was kind of a major cover-up. And so, this article that appeared in the Press Enterprise said that James Sanders had a source inside the investigation, and that he had taken some, and that the source had given him some portion of the aircraft that was suspected to have solid missile fuel residue on it, and he was having it analyzed.